Mírala ahí, mira. Monje vietnamita, mindfulness. El Nachi Tao, N-A-H Entonces él escribió un par de libros muy interesantes. Yo lo leí porque ¿ya? Yeah. Welcome. It's a pleasure for me to have you here in this session to have an informal conversation about such an important and current topic, which is COVID-19. And I have not seen, I don't know, I don't remember. I don't think we ever had something like this in the history of mankind. Such a small thing, a small virus, causing so much trouble and impacting our personal lives, our family lives, our economy, our ways of doing our leisure, our perspectives in terms of business, learning, social engagement. So I think it's something unique. And the challenge that we have is what can we, first of all, everybody's reading about it and understanding more about COVID-19, and that's a normal. Although it will run its course, and I think I will not talk about it because it's already well explained, the strategy of social distancing that we will flatten the curve of contamination, and that will allow the medical system, the healthcare system, to address more effectively, if all possible, the situation that we live today. But the conversation, and I call it conversation because I'll make it informal, I'll make it kind of soft. The conversation is about how technology can help healthcare and how some things that are happening in healthcare would eventually improve or make it simpler or easier or cheaper, more comfortable, the lives of patients, and by extension, the lives of family members, of relatives in general, friends, and an impact to our society. I think a great portion of the population of the world today is in their homes or with social limitations. And I was looking today, this morning, through the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, about the countries that have COVID-19 identified with different numbers. I think there's only few countries, maybe 3 or 4, I'm not sure, but very few in the map. I could even see them, the colors, the ones that don't show any COVID-19. So the presentation today, which will take about half an hour, give or take, and then we open up for questions and comments, it's about technology in healthcare in general and what's going on that could be relevant to us as human beings in terms of addressing this and future situations like this. The thing about coronavirus, or COVID-19 as we call it now, it's something that happened before, not as that name, but the family of these kind of, started with SARS some time ago, I think in 2003, etc. And then we have MER and ER, and then the H1N1. So, and now coronavirus. So we have had things that do not get this amplitude that we see now in coronavirus, but we have seen it before, situations that were also very concerning. And I would say that something similar or something maybe worse or better will happen again. And I think that the lessons to learn are to prepare better, to have more data, to have more information and knowledge, so that we improve our health system to process patients faster, easier, simpler, cheaper, in a much more effective way. So we're going to talk today about the pandemic as a big crisis, some innovations in biological and medical engineering, so what's going on out there in a summarized way. I will talk about artificial intelligence. That's an area that I particularly like, and there's a lot of growth in terms of using artificial intelligence in healthcare as in other segments. The robotics, which is an extension, we call it an extension of artificial intelligence in the way that robots would perform and work. Some of the growth drivers in the healthcare and what's driving or not driving healthcare to become more encompassing or more effective to address the needs of patients and the needs of society in general. And obviously the healthcare challenges are different in different countries, in different groups of people, in different regions, or even different states. So we need to also look at those differences as well. So the integration for better decision making, today different than in the past, slowly, and that depends as well in many factors, but there are integration needs to make the decision making process, helping doctors, nurses, social workers, and even the patients as well to make more informed decisions about their conditions. And also how technology can help a pandemic situation. Now, granted, the development of a vaccine or treatments is a complex topic, right? So we have been talking, sometimes I think you have seen in the media, they talk about a vaccine, and we need to test the vaccine. It takes a long time to make the vaccine, effective. However, but technology in general can be an important tool to help in any process related to healthcare. As technology helps it properly use different businesses as well, besides healthcare. So a little bit about myself. I have been in the technology arena for quite some time. I've been working in many countries. I have the opportunity to see and live in different countries, doing businesses and seeing societies performing and doing businesses and living in those societies and understand a little more about how our world operates for quite some time. I'm passionate about the topic of artificial intelligence and lately, in a couple of years, I have been really focusing a lot in terms of healthcare, the information systems or information technology applied to healthcare. So pandemic, as we know, is a big crisis, and there's a lot of things that we need to talk about that. But one of the things that's very important is that is a global contamination. So it doesn't really know boundaries or limitations of race, color, sex, and location, provided that we have a vector of spreading the disease that multiplies very quickly. And until we build that what we call herd immunization, that takes time. The process, that the percentage of people that will require hospitalization is a big challenge. In this case of coronavirus, the number of people that ends in death is small, and that's a big but, the percentage of people that require hospitalization is fairly significant. I would say about 20%, so which means that if you don't have enough space in a hospital, these individuals, when it's about being in a hospital, their situation could deteriorate, leading to additional deaths, right? So what we need to do is we need faster testing and diagnostics. So we need to find out faster and easier about what the patient or what the individual has or does not have. We need to collect that data, and we need to understand that data being collected globally and also understand why things are different in different countries. The other day I was reading about Germany, that Germany has a relatively low death percentage. It's interesting to investigate. Some other countries have a steeper death rate, so we need to investigate. All these, because remember, the process that we're living in is a process that will pass. It will take some time, it will pass. And what we're managing now is the ability to effectively and efficiently handle the number of patients in a way that they have a good treatment and they increase their chances of recovery. So, and that's fundamentally what it is. But once that passes, we need to take something positive out of these crises, which is what did we learn for the next time? Because these will happen again sometime, right? So it's just a matter of time. We're going to have something, maybe not as extensive, maybe in a different format, in a different contamination, but something will happen in the future. And then we learn with the data that we collected to understand patterns, understand contamination, and then define strategies for the society and also strategies for the health system and for our businesses and education systems, et cetera, to address or ease that process, make it simpler or more comfortable or more cumbersome, and more importantly, less deadly to our species, right, our people. So the health system or the health business or the health area has seen quite a lot of improvement since the 1950s. So without reading step by step that, when you look at 1950s, when we started X-rays and how we have evolved from 1960s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, is tremendous. So we have so much stuff that was done, for example, in the discovery of antibiotics, the introduction and usage in a more extensive way of the X-rays, the artificial kidney, which is way back in 1950s. So in 1960s, we have the ultrasound, the vascular grafts, the blood analysis, so many things that came in the 1960s, which seems like commonplace today, but there were developments at that time. So we have in the 1970s, we have the tomography, with computer-assisted tomography, we have artificial hip, So people start to look at bringing members, hips and other elements that we could replace in our body, biological, plant and food engineering. So in food engineering, so a lot of things are continuing to happen. In the 1980s, the MRIs, the laser surgery, the recombinant therapeutics, and in present day, there are a couple of things going on that I think is important to mention. One is the genomic sequencing, right? A lot of discussions about the implications and the benefits of the genomics. Once we sequence the human genomics, the gene therapy, and that's a huge discussion just in that. But that holds, in my opinion, a lot of possibilities. The emission tomography, the positive emission tomography, which is a much more capable way to do tomographies, image-guided surgery. And also there are additional things that we see today, which is the evolution and the growth of information technology, software and hardware, specialized software and hardware that aid, complements, and extends, that refines the hardware that we use in the health system, like the surgery, the X-rays, the MRIs, and we put them all in a way that we can integrate the information that they provide, turn that information to knowledge, and allows us to do sometimes what-if scenarios, simulate conditions, treat patients even from a distance, have more ways to give doctors and nurses more understanding about symptoms and their relationships of kind of a cause-effect, and based on data that has been collected, and the data points, and medicines that work, medicines that do not work, treatments that work, treatments that do not work, based on so many conditions that we have, because we have different genes, we have different makeups as human beings. So, and that is one of the promises that the technology, which has been the case in the health system, as I just told you about, from 1950s to today, but we have seen an acceleration of the integration, the ability to manage the data that we collected out of these devices. In the past, we used to see a lot of these devices disintegrated. We have the X-ray information, we have the MRI information, we have the lab information, and the doctors and nurses will make decisions based on the data points that they will collect. Now we see a lot more effective, or we see that becoming more effective. I think we still have a good way to go to make it more disseminated. But a couple of things in biological science. We look at material science. Some of you have never heard about nanotechnology. We look about information technology. We look at cognitive science. For example, what we call artificial intelligence, which is the deep learning, was one of the ways of artificial intelligence. Biological sciences in general, the evolution of biology and understanding elements of our human body, our genetics, and all those things, the electronics. There's so many things, engineering, electronics, manufacturing. All those things play a role in the future of healthcare. And obviously, all of these are tools to help us to make more informed decisions about the conditions. And personally, I think that at the end of the day, is to really make the lives of the patient easier. Less suffering, less pain, less, for example, blood loss in surgeries, easier recovery from their diseases or their ailments, better treatments, more effective treatments that lead to less side effects and those things, right? So I'm particularly very interested, and I've been reading and studying and working with AI, artificial intelligence, for quite some time now. And I see the evolution and the promise that it has. Now, one thing I want to tell you, it's still a lot of hype. Artificial intelligence has a lot of promises, yes, but still there's a lot of stuff that is not really truly intelligence. We call it intelligence, but it's truly not yet intelligent. But we have limited scenarios, and we have ways to look at these scenarios. We build patterns, understanding of patterns, if I will, and the computer will read those patterns faster and provide potential scenarios or potential recommendations or directions based on the information that's being read. It's almost like if you train yourself on doing something that you do repetitively, and you start to see things, for example, in different colors, and after like 1 hour, 2 hours, or 2 days, you already know, even if you do not pay attention to the colors, what colors are coming in your screen, because you see that in your brain almost like you learn by just the visual engagement with that picture. So you start to kind of understand the patterns. So machine learning holds a big promise in technology, engineering. The algorithms are being developed, the data analytics, which is fundamental. So a lot of discussion about data analytics, what do we do about the data, what do we do with the data, how do we use the data to improve, to make better decisions. Also, we also need to understand what is a better decision, right? Because we say that on a loose way, let's make better decisions. What does it mean? So all those things, artificial intelligence can help us to identify or understand. The clustering of data, so we cluster things that have similarities or things that have different or equal symptoms or treatments or not. We separate those clusters and identify the specific behaviors or the specific characteristics of those clusters. And those clusters, and cluster can be anything, can be a group or a combination of anything that is relevant to the particular problem. Those clusters would then hold some of the keys to understand the variations of groups, which is fundamental when, for example, you develop a vaccine, because the vaccine needs to work for everybody, right? But everybody is a very big term. And to make that vaccine takes time, because we need to ensure the vaccine is truly safe, not just safe, but also effective, that really will prevent the disease. So it's a lot of work in terms of understanding the effectiveness in those groups, the tests that needs to be performed, and eventually artificial intelligence brings that capability of allowing more abilities to understand those patterns and how the data points turn into information and then will build into knowledge. So I want to give you, because we talk about artificial intelligence and we barely see what does it mean, what is kind of a way to quickly, in this short time that we have, represent artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence fundamentally today is based on, in what we call neural networks. Neural networks are not new. They have been around for quite some time. But until in the past, neural networks was almost like a curiosity. Nobody really paid a lot of attention. There was in the very beginning, some people thought that neural networks would be a great solution to problems. And eventually there's a lot of disappointment about the effectiveness of that. And I think that one of the elements, there's a couple of reasons that we won't be able to get into that detailed discussion right now. But I think there was a lot of expectations without really focusing on the real capabilities of the tool. So, but artificial intelligence, as you can see in this picture, you have an input. And the input goes through a set of layers. In this case, we have a number of layers within the neural network. And each of the layers will process and will that input in a way. And the input goes from layer to layer, adding specific elements, and then eventually goes out as an output layer. And the output layer is the one that you want to have. So eventually, if you do train, and the term is this, you train your neural network enough, the neural network will be able to learn because you repeat. There are adjustments on the neural networks. I just leave it like that. There are adjustments that we make in those layers, and then the input comes in, and the output gets out. And then we learn how to adjust the neural network with enough data points that the input is the one that correlates, that relates. Maybe I should not use correlate as a different meaning, but relates to the input. And you have the output of the neural network in terms of the diagnosis. In this case that we see, we look at symptoms, could be chest pain, could be palpitation, could be cough, like some of those cases that we see in like cough in the COVID-19. Biochemical analysis of your blood or urine or others. Other features like age, gender, if you smoke, if you don't smoke. And you put all that information about a patient, and out of a neural network you have a diagnostic. This diagnostic, we're not saying that the diagnostic will replace the doctor or replace the nurse. That diagnostic will complement, will extend, will aid the medical professional to make a decision, a more informed decision, looking at all those data points. So the diagnostic could be positive, negative, or still uncertain. Maybe when you have all these things, still provides an uncertain diagnostic about a condition of a patient. Now, one of the things we have been talking about recently, and particularly in the COVID-19, is about telemedicine. Telemedicine holds its promise, and with this sort of tool, you'll be able to really process an information about a patient and allow the doctor from a distance to have a lot more informed decision about that patient. Also, things such as allergies, such as reactions or things that happen with the patient, like surgeries that the patient had before, medical history. I'm not even showing here because there'll be a lot of information, but medical history, how many times he was or he or she was in a hospital, if how many surgeries, what kind of surgery, how was the recovery time of that surgery, if there was any complications from that surgery. All those things will be considered as inputs in terms of the patient life. Medications that the patient takes today, medications that he or she was taking before, to give you an understanding about that potential diagnostic for the medical professional to start talking with the patient in a much more specific way. But neural networks also do other things. Neural networks can also process image. I'm just showing here cancer classification, as you can see in the picture. And neural networks are also not just data points like numbers or records or figures, but also pictures. You can recognize pictures, colors, shapes, patterns. And if you train again the neural net properly, which means you train the network to recognize a figure, a shape, or an object well enough, repeatedly enough, that will give you a more certain, understanding of that picture. And if you process different layers of information, different pictures about a tumor, or about cancer, or about a cell, the artificial intelligence will give you an output with potential, information that's relevant about that condition that the patient, has. So you see very easily that there's a big benefit for patients. Another thing that is also happening, and I'll go generically speaking, that in the medical field we have lots of physical objects that aid the patient. Some of you have wearables that you wear that gives you the pressure or the heartbeats. In the future, those wearables can increase, can become more, a lot of information. Besides what we see, the pacemakers and other things that we see implanted on humans, like artificial limbs and all the electronics, the systems that control artificial limbs, but also external elements such as devices that will be able to connect with you and give you a position of the patient, the condition of the patient, and monitor the patient in any circumstance or location, which is an extra layer of security or prevention for that patient in terms of giving them additional data inputs for a medical professional to see. In some cases, when you have, for example, a patient that had a heart palpitation or an irregular heartbeat, you wear a device for a couple of days, which will record your heartbeats and give the doctor a pattern of your heartbeats throughout like 3-4 days to see what kind of irregularity you have on a longer term, because it will not be possible in the EKG. That is a simple example of a tool that is already in place that in some cases is used and give the doctor sort of a window. Now, once you collect that input and feed into let's say a neural network with additional data about the patient, or for example, their blood analysis or history of surgeries or pre-existing conditions or medicine that the patient takes, you build a much more comprehensive understanding about that patient. Now, what is the benefit for COVID-19? If we collect enough data about COVID-19, we have ways to relate things and understand symptoms and understand underlying causes and why some patients really don't see many symptoms. And I think that's one of the crux of the matter of COVID-19. Why some patients don't see anything. 80% has a mild, development of the disease. 20% requires hospitalization. And small percentage of this, and a portion of this 20% really gets into a very serious condition that really may lead to death. Understanding those things, people, person to person, or groups of people, like I said before, clustering, I think would be a phenomenal benefit for our society. And for future, as I said before, COVID-19 we are living today and it's going to stay for a while, but what comes next, I have no idea. Nobody knows really. So one of the things that I want to quickly mention is about robotic surgery, but robots in general are becoming a lot more present in our surgery room. So we see the robotic surgery is a much more comfortable way to do some kinds of surgery. It doesn't apply for all the surgeries, but a lot more comfortable to many kinds of surgeries, and really from a patient standpoint. And I personally think that from a patient standpoint, is the number one priority is really give the patient, which is us, the patients are us, now or in the future, or anytime, more comfortable stay in the hospital, less pain, easier and faster recovery, less blood loss, less, more comfortable, recovery, the whole process of recovery after surgery is completed. So robotic surgery is now to stay and is becoming more common in different hospitals. So other thing that we could use robots for is, and remember guys, when I say robot, don't think about a robot. The picture here shows this little android, like with legs and arms. We don't need that funny, maybe you can have a funny face or a happy face in a robot. But reality is we don't need a happy face. We don't need, a robot that looks like human. We need a robot in the sense that it does things robotically. So it processes information and acts on things physically, so that helps you in some way, the patient in some way, etc. Actually, in some cases, they have put like telemedicine, they put a robot with a happy face because some of the patients were really sad because they were like far away and didn't see a doctor. And there has been some experiments, and people eventually even connected with the robot and almost consider them as a friend, which is interesting. But the purpose here of the robot is really to automate, streamline, facilitate, make it easier or faster, simpler, the process of, in this case, monitoring treatment. We need to understand if a treatment is effective. And this term effective, which we'll not get into here today because there's a lot of medical discussion about it, is a very, very, very important thing about artificial intelligence or about robots or about any area of healthcare. What is effective? What is efficient? What is a better decision making? How that improves the lives of our patients in general. Right? That's fundamentally what it's all about. So there are a lot of growth drivers in the artificial intelligence in healthcare. I just want to, we can truly through AI, if you will, we can make it an intelligent hospital eventually, integrate, and I'll show in a moment this integration, how it kind of looks like. And we'll be able to have a general view of the patient and also a general view of the patient in the health facility, and also about the health facility itself, about scheduling, about availability of beds, about processing time, quality of the service. Processing time is very important. We should never say make the patients go faster just for the sake of getting them out. I'm saying about having a faster service because it's easier, it's nicer, it's better for the patient to have excellent treatment sooner than later, so that he or she can be processed, in and out of the hospital faster without compromising its treatment or its, the quality of the health, the health care being provided. But you see, different areas in ophthalmology and exams, laboratory, you could collect all these information and process and integrate from a patient standpoint and have a coordinated, an integrated view of the patient. So there are a couple of things that are growth drivers of artificial intelligence. There are a couple of things happening in healthcare globally. That's not just in the United States, but in many countries. So we have a lot of growing expenses because these new advances, these developments are expensive. They require a lot of research. And this research eventually is passed along to the patient sooner or later, through the insurance or through individuals. And that's a challenge because how are we going to balance that in countries or communities that do not have the financial capability? And we're talking about ways to make that treatment more encompassing so that more people have that treatment. So more older people in the world. A lot of countries do not see growth of population. We see a decrease in population and a much older population, which then becomes naturally more vulnerable to different diseases naturally. And this is the way we evolve as we get older and we are prone to additional things. And in the case of COVID-19, you see that the most vulnerable population is the older population. So that becomes a challenge for the health system, how to balance. And when we see this discussion, particularly in the United States, about opening the economy or closing the economy and opening that, that's a balance, a very complicated balance, because at the end of the day, we're looking at reducing the rates of contamination so that we have quality healthcare, more attainable, more reasonable for more people, right? So we have also shortage of medical professionals in nursing. There's a huge backlog, of nursing and medical professionals. So we try to get to with artificial intelligence, and we show a couple of other things. Those medical devices, more better and more abilities for the medical profession or medical professionals to make decisions and to treat a patient in a much more comfortable way, taking into consideration the shortage of professionals. But we're not replacing the doctor, we're not replacing the nurse. We're not thinking about it and have an android coming and meeting you in a doctor's office and you'll be talking to a robot. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about aids and tools to really help the medical professional. So there's a lot of areas, and I would not read them all. I'm just going to give you some, but there's so many things happening in artificial and in technology, information technology that applies to the health system. For example, electronic health records, electronic medical records. So all your information, all your data, I would say, in a structured format that can be accessed by different applications, eventually globally. Now, it's not the case, but standards. So transaction standards. So we transact in a way in the health system that is a lot more, we're able to speak the same language. So we have codes and we call things the same. So we understand what we're talking about. Business requirements. So, what's happening today that may lead to requirements for the health system to address from a business standpoint that are happening in the world in terms of global supply chains or disruptions in the supply chain or different technologies or different or new the impact on the environment, that the oil and gas industry, all those things, energy industries, etc., that have impact on the environment. Those requirements, what are called generically business requirements, how are they impacting the health system? The bioinformatics is all about understanding how the biology, the data analytics, and understanding how the biology works. The data analytics and health intelligence. So we collect all these data points from multiple sources, and we turn into information. But then what? What do we do with this information? The fundamental is what we talked before. How do we make this a much easier way for the doctors to make decisions? So information systems, we have laboratory systems, we have billing systems, we have health systems, clinical systems, information analysis, cybersecurity, system performance, because if those things in artificial intelligence or information technology, they don't perform, then the patient will suffer, right? Because he's depending on that hardware, he or she will depending on that element, interoperability and the data model. So things need to work together, so they need to interoperate. So when you look at those elements, I'm just showing you some, but we have pharmacy systems, we have clinical systems, hospital management systems, finance control, we have material inventory management, all the medicines and supplies that we see today in the United States. People talk about masks and gowns, and managing that inventory is quite a challenge. The laboratory system, the procurement, the salary, the times, the allocation of peoples, because we need to also think that these individuals have a potential time that they can work in the health facility. Otherwise, they'll start to make mistakes. The human resources, all those things which are a combination of clinical systems, which are a combination of material systems, and also a combination of management or administration systems, they need to work together to really have a coordinated view of the hospital. Again, if the hospital, not just a hospital, but if the medical facility could be a smaller practice, if that facility, that hospital is better management, which means better management, some of the things that would consider better management. The patients go faster. We have high quality treatment. They really the ratio of finding the proper treatment that will solve a problem is high. The patient leaves happy with all these conditions. He feels that he was well, cared for when he was or she was in that facility. All those things will make a difference. They'll be cheaper for our society in general, and we will be able to then invest funds more in things because we are spending less in things that we could save without compromising the patient quality. So it's not about reducing the money that we spend. It's really about intelligent spending, so that we really spend less on things that we could save, and then we spend more in things that we need to develop and are more complicated and are more risky, right? So it's just a way of managing better the resources that we have and the society has. So then we see this separation. We see still today the administration of the hospital, the business and operations still separate, but we're going to evolve this thing in a way that's going to be more or less like this. So there'll be like a single, altogether, very combined way to manage the overall information within the health system. So we have clinical and data information, which will then be a combination of aid to the doctors and nurses and all the medical professionals, in physiotherapy or social workers and everybody involved in that process. But also we're going to manage better the resources, the allocation of resources, the supplies for that medical facility, the business and operations of that hospital, and all the information about the patient, scheduling the patient, make sure he or she does not wait that long, that serious cases are treated quickly, the triage in an emergency room is faster. So the ways to identify symptoms and situations, for example, in an emergency room or in a critical condition, are more, are easier and more effective in the sense that the mistakes will be reduced, and we're going to have more chances to really provide a much more effective treatment for the patients, right? So in a summary, and then we're going to open for questions, we see technology as a fundamental aid. It's not a panacea. It's not going to one size fits all. It's not going to be something that's going to solve all the problems. We're still going to depend on the human element of the doctors and nurses to do a good job treating and engaging with patients at all levels, not just the patients, but also their families, their relatives, society in general. But also we see a faster, more structured, organized hospital processing. Many hospitals are organized, but also we can also look at things from a process standpoint to make that easier and faster. We have improved data patients, the data processing and the data analytics of that patient. So understanding about all the things that we need to collect from that patient so that we don't collect too much or too little. So we have also better and easier and faster diagnostics, but good diagnostics that really link to the causes of the patient, the symptoms that the patient has, and provides a good quality treatment for those patients in terms of recovery rate and also in terms of side effects and the long-term consequences of that treatment. Cheaper healthcare in general, which is fundamental. We need to make cheaper healthcare. We need to make healthcare more affordable. We need to make healthcare. If you look at countries that are much poorer or third world countries, there's huge challenges to apply technology because there's no funding. But on the other hand, funding would also reduce the amount of money additionally to be spent, and that could be kind of a circle that needs to be carefully reviewed. Remote management, so patients that are in a distant situation, they will have telemedicine and be able to be treated properly. The data management and learning process that we not just solve the problem of the patient, but also we collect that data and we start to build that huge database. And that integrated database would allow us for future developments in healthcare, creating new medicines, vaccines, treatments, which are more comfortable, more effective, gives you less side effects, etc. Pattern review and further processing, any pattern that you have. Potential, faster stay in a hospital, so we kind of make the patient stay faster. Easier home care, like telemedicine, so people can stay home and still have a good quality treatment, so which is, in my opinion, fundamental. And reduce future contamination rates. In the case of COVID-19, there's a couple of things that I wanted to close. Number one is about the contamination process, how the contamination truly happens. So collect the data and really understand different communities or societies what is the case. Also, why some people have mild effects, as I was talking in the beginning, and some others have much more serious effects. And we say generically it's about age, but there could be, and there are other elements playing a role as well. So that if we could collect this data properly and process these data and understand that data, then we'll be better prepared for the next time. So I'll finish my formal presentation now. I'm just open for any questions you may have or comments, and looking forward to hear from you any points of view or comments that you may have about this so important topic of technology in the age of COVID-19.
Well, thank you, Doctor, and thank you, everybody, for being here with us. Now we're going to start with some of your questions, and the first one is, Dr. Lima, what would you say is the most important contribution of technology to this pandemic of coronavirus?
I think the biggest contribution of technology is still allow us to understand what's really happening, right? It's allow us to collect data and process that data in a way that turns into information and understand what data makes is more or less relevant to a particular case. And with that data, like temperature or pulmonary condition or chest congestion or other symptoms that the patient may have, oxygen levels, all those things, why some patients recover faster, why other patients take longer, and really as much as possible, because this is new, right? COVID-19 is just happening as we speak. But nevertheless, once we start the process, and it's already ongoing, the process of collecting the data, then we'll be able to start to learn about those patterns and then prepare ourselves better in the future. Because it will happen again. If not COVID-19, it's going to be something else, and we'll be better prepared for the next, I would say pandemic, but the next virus that may come around. Right?
Well, the other question is, could technology prevent a virus from becoming a pandemic as we are seeing nowadays, and how?
Yeah, I think that is a difficult question. I think that technology, I think the technology that we have today, unless we'll not be able to prevent a virus to become a pandemic, because when the virus started in China, they have strong measures on social distancing, of closing Wuhan for a long time, for quite some time, right, to really prevent that virus to moving out of that area. So I think that as we are today, I don't think technology will prevent, but you may reduce, maybe significantly, maybe not, but will reduce the impact of the virus in communities because we'll have more data and we'll be able to then understand what leads to what. So I think time is of the essence. So if you have enough data being collected, we'll be able to react faster. And if we don't prevent it, at least we could reduce the impact and we make the impact faster to go away sooner, right? Than later, and that's I think will be already a benefit. I have an impression, I may be wrong, that COVID-19 will be around for a long time because we don't have an immune system and we don't have a vaccine. So potentially all of us will have COVID-19 at one point, right? It's just a matter of time, I think. If the vaccine comes or if you have a treatment that is effective, then that may be a different circumstance in terms of treating COVID-19. But obviously, if a vaccine is produced sooner, then obviously there'll be less chances of we'll immunize more people. But anyway, but most of us will not see any symptom. It's a mild symptom, and that's something that technology could help. That's understanding why some people have mild symptoms and other people have more serious symptoms. Obviously, not including pre-existing conditions and immune system things. So those are kind of a natural, obvious circumstances for the patient to be in a risk group, right? But I think technology can help us to make the pandemic, a pandemic, more manageable.
The next question is, how do you see the future of the internet after this COVID-19?
Oh, yeah, I see. Some cases, some people have said the internet has just decrease its performance, right? Because that's an interesting conversation. I think if you're interested, some of you may go and look for the internet architecture, which is quite an entertaining understanding. Because we talk about internet as a this generic, vague element that is out there, right? It's kind of out there, truly. But there is an architecture, there is a connectivity, there are lots of connection points, there are fault tolerance and redundancies being placed, so we provide the communication and the infrastructure for people to connect. So as you have more people connected more often, obviously that will take internet to a halt in terms of in some subnets in some of the sections of the internet. So I think that is an interesting, although the human side, the patient side is the most important thing, but also our communication needs to be up to date and as effective and as efficient as possible. So I think that looking at the internet to continue to provide the performance and the scalability and the reliability, I think is a necessary thing to consider for the people that really, the Internet Task Force, to look at that and continue to monitor the internet performance, right? Because you have more and more people, eventually you're going to degrade, it could degrade, not you will, but it could degrade internet performance. Right?
Okay, the next question is, how can technology help us to detect fake news? Since we have seen a lot of fake news about people who is ill of COVID-19, and how can, a technology to solve this false information situation?
Yes. Now, I like this term fake news. It's an American term, and now it's global, right? Everybody, you go to any country, people are always fake news. I see in Latin America, I see in Asia, these words fake news, these two words fake news became almost like a global term. Now, it's true, there are, in these massive amount of production of data and that information, there's a lot of stuff that's not true, right? And granted, most of the people do not have time to validate what they see or they hear. They see something or they hear something and they just take it for granted, right? And I have observed that if you repeat something a lot, even if it's not true, there is a probability or possibility that that thing becomes a true thing, which is very unsettling, right? So I think there are some technologies out there, I know some of them, that allows you to, through artificial intelligence, to look at patterns of that information and cross-reference things. So if I say that an elephant is green, which is not green, and if I keep repeating the elephant is green, maybe some people will believe me that the elephant is green. But there are tools out there, there's software that has been developed, very advanced, very out there, cutting edge software that look at all these inputs on a given scenario and understand and separate what's true and what's false. And they look for data sources of those inputs and they immediately detect what is false on that data source. For example, if I have a false input with a true input, if I combine the two of them, of course I'm going to have a false condition, because false with truth together, if I need the two of them to work, I need truth, right, to work together. False and false is false, but false and true is also false. So in that sense, you combine things, these artificial intelligence software that are already out there, they allow you to understand those inputs and also understand the output, which is the fake news, and say fake. So yeah, technology is already helping us regarding fake news.
Thank you so much. Now a question from Veronica. She wants to know, when can we start considering artificial intelligence outputs reliable in this case where the virus is relatively new and is multifactorial?
Yeah, exactly. So this is not easy as well, Veronica, because the artificial intelligence, as we discussed, is still a learning process. It's not truly intelligence as we know as a human intelligence, although we use loosely this term intelligence. But artificial intelligence is what we call narrow artificial intelligence, so it kind of solves for some cases or some scenarios, which means we build that scenario, and even when you look at a neural network, we make the neural network learn. So we provide thousands of data inputs, such as the computer have seen so many data inputs that will understand that input in any shape, form, size, color, etc., if you will. So in that case of COVID-19, remember, we don't understand much yet. Of course, we understand the genetics of COVID-19, but we don't understand a lot of the implications of COVID-19 on patients, right? We don't know why, and if, and how patients have certain behaviors and some conditions based on their internal conditions. So to really have, again, will not be intelligent, but will be more considered capable system to really map out COVID-19, we would have to have millions of data points processed about COVID-19 patients, symptoms, case, treatments, recovery times, blood types, location, age, pre-existing conditions, blood pressure, all kinds of things put in place to make some sense and then generate some outputs that say, if ABC, then that. If C, D, F, then G. And we don't have that yet. So it would take some time, but the technology is out there. But I think today we need to focus on solving the problem, which is flattening the curve of contamination so that we can handle the number of patients in a hospital. But eventually, the artificial intelligence will be able to improve the understanding of the behavior of COVID-19 and hopefully will allow us to prepare better for future viruses, although they mutate, and when they mutate, they have different behaviors, right? And they deploy differently, and the contamination is different, but nevertheless, it's a starting point, right? And then we adapt.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is a question from Wanda. She wants to know how would a technological crisis affect the healthcare sector in this time of COVID-19?
How technology what?
A technological crisis would affect the healthcare sector.
Technology crisis. No, I don't think we have a technology crisis. I think we have a pandemic crisis. I think we have an issue with the virus. It's not about, I think the virus is relatively new, right? We don't know exactly, there's a big mystery about how COVID-19 started, the coronavirus started. We don't know exactly. We say it was in a market in Wuhan, but that market did not, the market did not develop the virus because of the market. I think there was a lot of things that could have happened. It could have been generated, for example, in the ocean. It could have been generated in the atmosphere. It could be generated by some combination of chemicals that got into some biological systems. I don't know. We don't know yet how that happened, right? So I think it's not a question of technology. It's a question of lack of knowledge and the time that this thing has propagated, right? We're talking about, I remember in January, we were beginning to hear about the cases in China. And now 3 months later, January, February, March, we are in the great majority of the global population, a huge percentage of the global population is at home. They cannot even go out now, as everybody is in their homes. So we moved from not knowing anything, or not even knowing about COVID-19 as kind of something's happening out there, to a situation that everybody's home. And we have a health crisis in the United States. Not because of the United States do not have professionals and capable people and technology. It's not about technology, it's about volume. It is about too many people getting sick at the same time, and the health system will not be able to handle that. That's why the social distancing is important, because it keeps you at home and reduces the propagation rate of that disease, and gives time for the health system to process those patients that require hospitalization. Because as you know, fortunately, the great majority of COVID-19 patients recover well, and a small percentage die, fortunately. But the question is, obviously, every life is important, so we need to reduce that mortality rate. And if we can avoid anybody that do not need to be dead to be alive, I think is a great win. So I think we need to have a health system that can process the number of patients that are coming. It's not a technology crisis. It's more like it's a pandemic crisis.
Okay, another question. Is it possible for patients to get full medical attention without the need of going to a hospital in these times when social distancing is the priority?
Yeah, I think there's a challenge, right? Because when you see the medical attention and you have symptoms, at the end of the day, the telemedicine can give you directions about the symptoms that you have and some conditions that may ask you to go to the hospital. I think that a lot of people will play safe and go, right? Because if they have a very serious case that cannot breathe, or they have very strong symptom, particularly not able to breathe, they'll go to the hospital. I think, again, telemedicine is not a solution to solve all the problems. It's a tool. It's almost like saying, if I don't have a wood a hammer, build a house. No, it's a tool that helps us, build a house. A screwdriver does not really fix the engine. It helps us to do that. So telemedicine or technology help us in healthcare to really allow us to know more about a patient condition. But that transition between telemedicine to going to the hospital is a decision that will be made with the medical professional and the patient together. And some patients definitely will go there and just try to get in because they'll say, hey, such and such, I have this feeling. Which is tricky because if the patient is not truly a high-risk patient, he or she will be taking space from a true critical patient. And with the times that ventilators and masks are in short supply, that's a big problem, right? So, I think there's a combination of common sense, a combination of, fear will play a role, technology will help, but there'll be a lot of things that would just happen, uncontrollably or as they happen, right?
Okay, that will be all the questions. Professor, thank you so much for this information, and thank you for being here with us.
Well, thanks very much for the time. I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of what I have learned, and I wish you good luck and the best luck possible considering the conditions, the circumstances, and looking forward to see you in the future in future conversations or opportunities to present or discuss. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Ahora, muy interesante.
I see Atlantis as a good example of a place where you can start and or change careers.
Atlantis caught my attention because it provided that atmosphere of a family-oriented atmosphere, and I liked the fact that it had small classes. It has been really welcoming. I met some wonderful people, warm hearts.
Actually, the career services have been wonderful with me. They helped me to to know how to job hunt and where to look for jobs and how to network to get a job in the future.
I'm one of the privileged person actually coming out of the military with a BA program, and fortunately for me, this university has a lot of help in that. At the beginning, I was skeptical because I didn't know too much about the transition from the military to civilian, but Atlanta University did an excellent job. They never had a problem. They never hesitated to provide us some excellent information, and they help us a lot. And that's something that I really appreciate about the university, because that is different. It's more like a human contact with the students. That's something that I believe is going to make a difference in order to progress in my career.
My journey in the Atlantis University was really good. I learned a lot. My best professor, I think it was Felicia Reynolds. She taught me e-commerce and she also taught me project management. I learned a lot about the management part, about the business, because I was just learning about technology. So doing something about business was really interesting for me. And it was a really good journey. I made a lot of friends, a lot of good friends from different countries. So thank you, Atlantis.
The MBA is helping me currently because I'm working for an agency, marketing agency. The program I had different classes that are helping me now, such as marketing management, operation management, accounting for managers, and definitely the program is very useful for me in this moment.
What I really loved about the MBA program is that the classes, the size is not that big, so we stayed together each class. So I got to know them, they became my family, we became really good friends, and I got to introduce to their culture, which was wonderful to get a glimpse at how they think and what's their backgrounds. I'm very grateful and thankful for this experience.